Welcome to All Things Moore County, Moore County's weekly radio show highlighting the many facets of the Sandhills. That includes real estate, lifestyle, community and neighborhoods. And now, from 4 Properties, here's your host, Bill Sahadi.
Good morning and welcome to the talk show, All Things Moore County. Dorothy, you've known for a long, long time that I'm from the Northeast.
Yes.
And am not a native Southerner.
No, you are not.
So,
but you have adapted quite well.
But people who know me go, oh, you're not from the South.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the culture we grew up with was very different from the South.
Yes.
When we would open the sports pages as kids, we would see college football.
Right.
We would, on the back page, we would see race car driving, NASCAR, on the back page.
Right.
It was not a culture that we didn't have a whole lot of.
Your world didn't revolve around race cars up there in the north.
When I moved to Atlanta, I drove from northern New Jersey down to Atlanta, and I got stuck in traffic somewhere in North Carolina. This was many years ago. I couldn't move my car. There was a racing event going on. There were people with RVs. There were people. It looked like they were taking over the Charlotte, outside of Charlotte, I think. And here I am, this kid from the Northeast, going, "What is this all about? Is there a football game?" No.
Nope.
So I am a little bit of a neophyte, but I'm going to learn a lot today.
I'm sure you are.
We're being joined today by Jon Marshall, who is the owner of Innovation Performance Technologies, and he has a lot to say about the love affair that Americans have with the automobile.
Yep.
He has a lot to say about the state of the industry, the car industry.
Okay.
And I think he's as passionate about nostalgic vehicles as I am about my shaving collection.
I would say that's probably accurate.
And,
yeah.
but most people don't know anything about shaving, so
That's
I'm going to
right.
be letting him be the guru today. John, my first assumption was wrong. I thought you were a native Southerner before meeting you, but you're not. You're from Connecticut.
No, probably one of the best compliments that I ever received when I got down here is I got told that I was the most Southern Yankee that a bunch of guys over in NASCAR ever saw.
Oh.
So I think that's a compliment.
That is.
I think it was a compliment. I'm not really sure.
Are you from Connecticut?
Yeah, I was born and raised near Greenwich, Connecticut, where all the real rich people were. But I grew up in a normal upper middle class family. My dad was an engineer and was in World War II. Grew up there. My mom actually was paralyzed from my birth, so it was a very different way of growing up than people realize. So we had a nice, big, beautiful home, and we lived in a really nice area. But you never know what somebody's going through in their life.
Huh? How did you? Was this the automobile? Was this a passion of yours as a kid growing up?
It was, and I can remember my brother having the car magazines, Hot Rod magazines, and
Right.
Carcraft.
Right.
And I was drawn to it.
Yeah.
My first job was at age 15. I started washing cars at a car dealership.
Right.
And my first car I built was at 15. And I think hearing it run for the first time was pretty inspirational. I hear cars that we build get started up once a week, and it doesn't have that same feeling of being 15 years old and putting it together and reading a manual. And I really didn't have any supervision. So it came out kind of okay. And I got it running, and probably nothing I'd be proud of today, but it was a proud moment for me to hear that car running for the first time.
Yeah.
And it kind of inspired. When I went to college, I got a degree in accounting and then went on to get my MBA.
Where'd you go to school?
I went to Post University for my undergrad and went to a small experimental school in New Haven, Connecticut. That has a bulldog for its mascot. I did actually go there.
You talking about UConn?
No,
Oh.
no. They have one too.
Okay.
No, it's Yale. And
Okay.
and I'm embarrassed that I have attended there, to be honest, with the way the culture's changed. I don't want to get into that.
That's another show.
That's another show. But then went and worked in accounting for an accounting firm. And then I went on to work for someone called Dillon Reed. So it's like a BlackRock, if you're familiar with BlackRock. I'm sure everyone is.
Yeah.
There's also other companies out there just like BlackRock, and Dillon Reed's one of them. I went to work there as a due diligence accountant to look at companies, to evaluate them. And I was putting in probably 60-hour work weeks, was trying to study for the CPA exam. At the same time, trying to do the MBA thing. It was just really a lot. And I was taking the train into New York City every day.
Right.
So I'd get in my car and I'd drive to Darien, get on the train, go all the way into New York City. So you're talking 2 to 3 hours a day, just go back and forth to work.
Down on Wall Street?
I was on Wall Street,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Well, actually, Madison Avenue,
Okay.
close enough.
Okay.
And what transpired there is it was a Friday night. My mother and father had both passed away in a real short period of time. I lost some other personal stuff went on in my life. It was really kind of sad. Nothing I had control over. But I was at a train station at 8 o'clock at night waiting for the next train to come. And I see this man who's probably in his mid-50s. And I recognize him as one of the senior partners in the firm who doesn't even know I exist as a human being. But he got on the train, and he was actually maybe 3 or 4 seats away from me, looking towards me. I could see him. And he looked disheveled and tired and worn out and beat up. And I could just see the wear and tear on him from doing this very trip and from working, in the Wall Street environment. I could see it had burnt him out. And I said, everything I've done to this date is to be that guy.
Right.
I'm working to be that guy. And
Right.
And I spent the next few days really contemplating my life and what direction I wanted to go in. And then I decided that I was going to run away from home and join the circus. And I got an opportunity to work in the United States government, which I did with the military, the Department of Defense, and some other agencies that I wound up on that path. And when I came home, I decided what my next step would be. I think everybody should change their career throughout their lives.
Right.
And I always had this thing I wanted to do where I wanted to build older cars. And in 2016, a law changed in the United States that most people don't know about called the Low Volume Production Act. And that allowed anybody to be a car manufacturer. And there are limits to that, by the way. The car has to have been produced prior. So you're taking an old car and you're making it new again.
Right.
Had to be 25 years or older.
Right.
The vehicle has to meet all the DOT regulations for today for, basic safety stuff, not airbags, but everything else. And it has to have an EPA engine in it. And EPA, that was the tough one for us to overcome. The EPA, when you build a car for this current year, it must meet the EPA requirements for an engine and drivetrain of the current year.
Wow.
So we have to, there's a lot of government hurdles here. Actually, one of the ones that were really weird that we had to overcome was weights and measures. And I didn't know that there was such a thing called the Department of Weights and Measures. But they make sure that a candy bar is the right weight. They also do the same thing in the auto industry. And I'll give you an example. When we make a 1968 brand new Camaro, not one part can be from an original 69 Camaro because you'd be buying a used part. It has to be a complete new car. So in 2016, we went about building the first car, and we brought it to something called the Specialty Equipment Manufacturers Association show in Las Vegas. That's the biggest show out there. We also brought it to the Detroit Auto Show, and we got a lot of interest. People said, well, I want to own one of those. So you got to kind of look at who my customer is right now. It's the guy that either had one or wanted one.
But never did.
Yes. But what happens is even if they had one, they met their wife and they get married and have a kid. And then, the 69 Camaro is not really convenient for your baby. So the 69, here comes the minivan, So that car went down the road and the station wagon and then a minivan came along. And now the children grow and they go off to college and they start their own lives. And they want their 69 Camaro back. But they really don't want their 69 Camaro back. And that leads us to, what's going on in the auto industry. We forget that if you're over than 50 years old, you know what a carburetor is. You know how to start your car up and pump the gas once and let it idle because you're not going to drive away immediately. We forget this because nowadays fuel injection and electronic controlled engine management systems, you start the car up, you just drive away because the computer is actually controlling oxygen in the fuel mixture now. And we don't understand how far we've come in the last 20 or 30 years in the automobile industry. There have been real leaps and bounds that we take for granted. It's like same thing with the cell phone and all the other electronic stuff that's in front of us.
Right.
We don't realize that General Motors and Ford and Toyota really designed improvements to cars that we take for granted. And then, so we took the most current capable stuff that's available, but we kind of had a rule that we would build a car that met and looked like the original car, as detailed as we could get it. And that's what we built.
So you will take an older vehicle, a muscle car, a Mustang, a Camaro, and upfit it with current parts, but does it drive like it's a 2025, 2020 car?
Great
but
question.
It has the look of the nostalgic vehicle?
Absolutely. So we're not upfitting. We take sheet metal and we start with sheet metal. If you can imagine, we're literally building a brand new car from the ground up.
Okay.
So it is a brand new car. So what we're doing is we're taking a lot of the current suspension technologies and digital stuff. So the backup camera and your turn signal, the sensors and all the stuff, the Bluetooth, all the stuff that you get in a brand new car, we put in our cars.
You know what I notice around the roads? I went to college and I got out in the middle 70s. I went to Lafayette in the Lehigh Valley.
Yeah.
I knew you would.
Yeah, I would.
And so at that time, we had tons of Volkswagen Bugs on
Volkswagen.
campus.
Yeah, that
Do you
was
remember?
the car. Oh, yeah.
The Volkswagen was the Bug, the Beetle was the car. Today, you see all these Bugs, the recreation of them, but they're brand new vehicles.
Yeah.
They look like the Beetle from the outside, but there's nothing about them that is reminiscent of the original.
Absolutely. So the only two cars that we make right now, we're about to build a new one, by the way. We're about to start a new project that is going to get very interesting. We're just finishing a relationship up with Toyota. We already have a very good relationship with Toyota because of other stuff we do for the U.S. military. But we're about to bring a new product into the United States that every Special Forces guy that's out there listening knows what I'm talking about, which is the Hilux. And the Land Cruiser, which is the original off-road Land Cruiser that's out there from the 70s.
Yeah.
We're about to bring them to the United States.
Was that the Toyota?
That's the Toyota.
Okay.
So for us to build a car, that's one of the components you have to check the box on. We have to have permission from the original manufacturer. So I'm only allowed to make Gen 1 Camaros, 67 through 70.
Okay.
Which is like 69 and a half. And I'm only allowed to make Mustangs 64 and a half through 1971 and 2. That's it. That's the limit. So those are the only two products I can make that are brand new. I can restore cars, which we do all the time. We're restoring a bunch of cars. But now we have an opportunity to go back to the 1979 Hilux and Land Cruiser and build those in the United States and offer those. And that's this is, a matter of fact, one of the first times I'm mentioning it out to the public. I'm going to do it on your radio station here.
Yeah.
That we're very close to that deal. So you guys that are out there that are used to driving, you're overseas driving the Land Cruiser 70 Series and the Toyota Hilux, we are about to bring, and I'm limited to only 320 cars a year. My manufacturing, by law, we can only make 300 cars.
Wow. That's exciting. You're based where? In Aberdeen?
We're the small car manufacturing company that nobody's ever heard of. We're actually in Aberdeen, right off Route 5. We're in the old Eaton Pride. They used to make golf clubs.
Okay, I know where you are.
That's our building.
Okay. We're going to come back in the second set. Jon Marshall's our guest. Innovation Performance Technologies is a company. It sounds to me like you decided to go back to what your childhood passion was, and walk away from the the travails of Wall Street and the pressures, and because it was more important how you lived your life and what you did.
I think that's a true statement. I never really looked at it that way, but I think it's very true. You know, I'm blessed to have a great family, and God's really blessed me. I really am blessed.
Well, you're lucky, because if you can do what you're passionate about, everything else, it's easy. I mean, my dad used to always say, every time you wake up in the morning, you better hope your plate is full every day, and you're a very lucky
Amen.
guy, right?
Boy, amen to that.
We'll be right back. This is All Things Moore County. Wow. Okay, we're back. Our second set. Talking with Jon during sets about the Toyota. I'm looking at the picture now of the truck. You can only build 300 of them.
Yes, federal law allows a small volume manufacturer like myself to only make 300, and those 300 are going to be absorbed in America. We won't even feel it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You make me think about growing up in the 70s, my first vehicle, and it was a 1965 F-85 Oldsmobile.
There you go.
You knew it?
Oh, I've got a 64.
Do you really?
Yeah, I got a 64 F-85.
So my father, it was his car. He had a Buick. He had the F-85, and he decided it was okay for me to buy it from him. He wouldn't give it to me, of course. He had to teach me. And it was not a very comfortable car. It had a bench seat, and I don't even remember if it had seat belts.
64, yeah, it had a lap belt, but it didn't have a shoulder belt.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And but there's a real nostalgia that people have for their cars, and part of what it seems like you're doing is you're capitalizing on that, but you're giving them the opportunity to see what a Camaro would look like based on 2020, 2024 standards. Now you could really, because they were not comfortable cars.
They weren't, and they weren't. You know, they have plastic seats, and you slid around. You know, we take it for granted. You know, when we have customers come and they'll bring us a picture of their '69 Camaro, and they'll say, "Hey, I met my wife in this car.
Right,
We dated, and this is the car, and I want to get it back." It's great when we have a real original car, and we go, "Hey, why don't you just remember this nostalgia moment by driving one of these?" And it's truly horrible.
Yeah.
And then we switch back to what we make today, and then they sit in it. That's what happened with Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper called us and said, "Hey, I want you to build a '68 Mustang for me."
Seriously?
Yeah, he and I didn't even know it was him when he talked to me for about 20 minutes. And then he decided he's going to fly in to see us. And I think the real reason why we got the contract with him is because we're next to the Pinehurst Country Club, and
He's a
really
golfer.
enjoys golfing.
Yeah.
But he came, and we talked. He wanted a 1968 Bullet from the movie Bullet. If you remember that movie with Steve McQueen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the car. He
wow.
wanted that car. And I said, well, you want that car, only modernized. And we built it for him. And once he got here, and I showed him the kind of seating that he'd like and ergonomically, and he had some pretty weird requests. He wanted a CD player. We hadn't put a CD player in a car in a very long time.
Right.
And he was really concerned about air conditioning because he lives in Scottsdale, Arizona, and we had never built a car for the desert. So I got to be honest with you, I was a little concerned, but it all worked out. The CD player is, he explained it to me. He said, you know, people send me demo tapes all the time on CDs.
Right.
And the only time I get to listen to a demo is when I'm driving my car going somewhere. And I
Right.
went, well, okay. So we built his car, and same thing. Like he wants that Steve McQueen look. It's kind of cool. Here comes this car, like the Steve McQueen car, and then Alice Cooper jumps out of it. It's kind of, I think it's we're proud of that one.
The you're right about the cars in the last 15, 20 years, how much the technology has changed, and we take it for granted. I mean, they're almost
We
like
do.
thinking machines on their own.
We could talk. We're going to divest into that. The reality is, what's coming next. Whether you're 7 or 70 and you're listening to this broadcast,
Yeah.
you probably want to hear this part of the show.
Yeah.
Because honestly, what's coming is wonderful and frightening at the same time.
Self-driving vehicles.
Self-driving, I was in a self-driving car 2 days ago and went.
I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
Well, and you say you won't be able to carry, a calculator in your pocket. I remember my sixth grade teacher saying, you got to learn how to do math because you'll never, what are you going to do, carry a calculator around? Well, Mrs. Liz, if you're still out there, turns out everybody's carrying a calculator around.
That's true.
That's
so
true. Cars are the same thing. What's coming now is absolutely frightening and exhilaratingly positive at the same time. Those people that are going to age out with their cars, and that means, at what point do you recognize that you don't have the same skill sets you had? I'm a race car driver, part-time, and we took a car to Bowling Green's, Kentucky, a Super V8 car that we had just built for this one endurance class. I was in Bowling Green's, Kentucky, where we've won races there. It's a track I'm very comfortable on that's run by General Motors.
Right.
I didn't feel comfortable. This was only a couple of months ago. I just knew that at my age, I didn't have the sharpness anymore. Can I drive a car race around the track and look really cool? Yes. But do I have that sharpness anymore? No, I don't. Same thing with my pilot's license. There's going to come a day where I feel like I'm not as sharp as I need to be. Well, that all happens to everybody. It happens to all of us. Cars are the same way. We're used to our driver's license. At what age do we really become, we question our ability? And what's really sad is I worry about that person who's 80-something years old maybe, and they're starting to feel a little uncomfortable.
Right.
They live by themselves. They go to the grocery store. To maintain their normal life, they have to drive.
Right.
Well, the new self-driving cars, the way they are today, are pretty amazing. I just went 3 days ago. I jumped in one and pulled out of our shop, and we went to lunch in it, and we didn't touch the steering wheel once.
What?
We drove from Aberdeen. Went to Aberdeen. We went to I can't remember where we went to lunch, somewhere in Southern Pines, and the car literally parked itself. By the way, it found a parking spot in the parking lot and parked itself. We're there.
Were you pumping your foot on air to put the brake on because you saw the car in front of you and maybe you were too close?
It does. It knows. The technology's here, but I think it's in its infant stages, right?
Yeah.
We AI. What's really frightening that's coming is also the greatest thing that's coming, which is AI. I think the leap you're going to see in the next 10 years, 5 to 10 years, is going to be pretty interesting. I see self-driving cars coming. I see large car manufacturers making cars without steering wheels. That's going to probably happen in the next 10 years. So, you don't become a slave to your driver's license because you can't go somewhere, whatever.
Do you remember the cartoon, The Jetsons?
Yeah, I do. It's coming. It's here.
Really?
Yeah, it's
That's
here.
what I'm thinking about as you're talking.
Yeah, well, the cars fly themselves. Well, not really the cars the way you think. I think you're going to see drones that be able to carry people, and that's coming. And the FAA has already designated that airspace for that very reason. You're going to probably in the next 10 years you'll be able to buy a flying car, but I won't really call it a flying car. Think of it more like a drone, And I want to go somewhere, and this drone will fly itself. You'll say, hey, I want to go to wherever you're and park in your parking lot. And it's going to get really interesting because if that happens, we just made accessible places to live that we've never lived at before. At the top of a mountain, that's pretty hard to get to. Well, guess what? If you have a drone vehicle, the drone vehicle can make that happen.
Will the drone vehicles hover over the roads that are existing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what the FAA has done is they've designated highways in the sky. So below 500 feet AGL, above ground level, they've designated where these vehicles will fly in. And they've already done that.
Wow. Crazy.
Well, yeah, that part's great, and giving people more accessibility, making cars a lot more efficient. That's coming, okay? What is also coming is, I think, a Y in the road that could be quite dangerous for people that own the future cars. I think we're teetering on a really dangerous line, which is how the decisions we make in the next 10 years will affect the auto industry and how we travel. in positive ways and in frightening ways.
Right.
The frightening way is we're used to going to the gas station and putting gas in our car, and if you really pay attention, there's a gas tax, federal tax, local tax. That's 40 cents plus of every gallon of gas you buy. It's a lot of money. Okay,
Right.
if you get an electric car, the government doesn't get that anymore. It's gone. So how would they still get this revenue cycle? Once the government starts taking a tax, they get used to that money.
Right.
They don't like that it goes away. Well, the way to do that is with a carbon footprint tax, where you go, okay, we're going to look at the data on your car, your electric car that you drove it, and we're going to give you a tax for every mile you drove it. That gets interesting. And then we'll take it one step further. Based on your carbon footprint personality, you're going to get allowed so many carbon molecules a year. And as you're driving your electric car, you're consuming those. Well, what happens when you run out? Well, when you run out, you can't drive your car anymore. And you may say, well, I want to take a trip to the beach this weekend.
Right.
And, well, according to the United States government, you don't have enough carbon molecules. Therefore, your car won't let you drive there. That's where things start snowballing into a really frightening area.
I want to come back in the third set and talk to you about, make some predictions about gas-powered vehicles versus electric.
We can do that.
Where we're going. Jon Marshall is my guest. His company is Innovative Performance Technologies. You're on Taylor Street in Aberdeen.
Yes, sir.
This is All Things Moore County. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our final set of All Things Moore County. Jon Marshall, the owner of Innovation Performance Technologies, is our guest. And John, the more I listen to you talk, I think you could do one of those TED Talks. Technology, education, I'm not sure what it all stands for, but you could do a podcast because you have a respect for the history of the automobile, but you also have a vision for the future and you know what's coming. So the span from the 1950s to today have been leaps and bounds.
Absolutely.
But you have a feeling the next 10 or 15 years will almost replicate that past 70.
I think that's true.
Yeah.
I think that's true. In 1950, it was right. We had soldiers coming home from the war,
Right.
that went out and got jobs, and it really kicked off our industrial revolution. And when Eisenhower was in Germany, he found the Autobahn that Hitler had made to keep the ability of moving tanks and military stuff across the country. And he brought that, adopted it home, and they passed a law basically with U.S. Congress, with the United States Congress back in the 50s, that they'd connect every major city via highway.
Right.
Well, they did that for military reasons. Nobody thought, wow, we just connected the whole United States via trucking and travel, and the rest is history. Everybody wanted to buy a car, and cars were pretty simple. Get me to work, get me, to vacation with my kids. But as time went by, creature comforts came in, and the reliability got better. In the 1960s, cars didn't go 100,000 miles.
Right.
Now today, cars go 200,000-300,000 miles.
Right.
They have pretty long lives. But the cost is the second most expensive thing people are going to spend in their life is going to be an automobile, transportation.
Right.
The house being number one and the car being number two. But the cars are catching up quite quickly. The idea that an F Ford 150 costs $150,000 now, you get the super tricked out version with all this crazy stuff in it. That's what I charge for my built cars from the hand up. We basically build. Somebody said this once, and it really kind of lit a thought in my mind. They said, "You're making Ford Ferraris." I said, "What do you mean?" Well, you hand build a car from the ground up. That's kind of what a Ferrari is. And I said, "Man, I hope the people that give me a check and buy my cars feel that way." But I think most of them do, because we build some pretty amazing cars that are based on the way cars are now. So in 50s, the cars were pretty simple, and then they got more and more and more sophisticated. But they were really bad on gas mileage because the technology was there. So it was the invention of the computers computer and a microchip that really changed the auto industry because it meant we can now put engine management systems in these cars.
Right.
And what people don't realize is most of the big advancements that have occurred in cars are from racing. And you're going to be shocked about this. I'll give you an example. The first mirror on a car was in 1913, and it was at the Indianapolis 500 where the drivers one driver wanted to see the cars coming up from behind him, and he took a bathroom mirror and stuck it on the dash of the car. And the rest is history. Now we have, of course, rear-looking cameras and TVs and blah, blah, blah. Racing engine technology in the late 80s, they started building engine management systems for Formula One teams where they can control the fuel mixtures to get the gas mileage they want, to get the horsepower they want. It works like this. Try to imagine you have a garden hose, right? And the water's coming out of the garden hose. That's a carburetor. The fuel comes out at a certain rate, and what the car industry tried to do is make it work at whether it was cold or hot. They kind of took a thing in the middle of it. What fuel injection did is it allowed to put a nozzle on that, like your garden hose nozzle, and fine mist it.
Yep.
And that really, you are taking less fuel and it's becoming more efficient. Well, the new port injection systems, which have come out in the last 5 to 6 years, they direct the fuel into the combustion chamber. That's direct injection. That's a super mist. That's like now you're adding a lot of pressure in that garden hose to squirt it out at a far more efficient way. Try to imagine a cup of gas generates so much heat energy, right? And the amount of heat energy we could create on that cup before with a carburetor was not very efficient. But now we've really made them efficient. Mm-hmm. The problem is we came up with all this great efficiency, and I think the general idea was to make cars get better gas mileage and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But the customer said, well, I want to turn that into horsepower. And I'll give you an example. I have a 1969 car that has a 427 in it. And it produced 425 horsepower. And at the date back then, that was the hottest, that was a supercar back then. Well, the average cars that you can go to the Chevrolet dealership and buy right now make 430 to 480 horsepower. So everybody's driving a muscle car now. They just don't know it. Now, instead of the car companies using that energy capability with this fuel injection to make cars more efficient and you could have a smaller engine, the customer wants more power. So here we are. The electric car is the next leap, okay? And here's the problem with the electric car. I could talk you into it or talk you out of one pretty easily. But the reality with an electric car is motors are powered by electricity. Engines are powered by a combusted material. So gasoline, engine, electric, motor, okay? Mm-hmm. Motor engines are more efficient. Motors are more efficient than hydrocarbon engines by far. Mm-hmm. The problem is the battery. The problem is where does the energy come from? And when you compare the electric car to a combustion car, we're being lied to. And I mean, it's a blatant lie, okay? So you kind of wonder, like, you know, what in our government thought it was a great idea to force the electric car on the population. If you're a young engineer and you live in downtown Raleigh and you work for an electronic software company and you drive 5 miles to work every day and you can plug your car into your townhouse, right. You can drive back, electric car is probably the perfect car for you. That future that's great because our electric technology with batteries allows for that. Once you get beyond there, it really is a race between electric and gas wins. So what we did is we decided we were going to on our own try an experiment. Could we take a car out of the woods and restore it with parts we could get out of the junkyard and basically build this car and keep track of every carbon footprint we used to create this car? And we did that. We had 2 interns, one from Kesling University, to come down, and that was his job, to calculate every carbon molecule we used to build this car. Then we did a comparison to an electric car. And what people don't realize is how much carbon it takes to make an electric car. Right. And how much carbon it takes to keep that electric car going in a 20-year life cycle. When you compare a gasoline car to an electric car, it's about 18,000 more tons to have a 20-year life cycle on an electric car and a gas car. And your audience is going to flip when I hear this, but it's true. So then, well, if that's true, where are we? If we could get the battery technology where you could drive a car 1,000 miles, right, on one charge, and there's capabilities to recharge your car as quickly as you could put gas in it,
Right.
they're going to win. So it's over. It's
Okay.
the electric cars here. That's where we're going. I think that's going to happen in 10 to 20 years, but not yet.
Right.
Right now, the gasoline engine is far more efficient because of the technology leaps that our car manufacturing companies, Toyota and Ford and Chevy and General Motors, and they've made these leaps, but we don't recognize those leaps because the average consumer doesn't realize how much technology the car companies have advanced in the last 20 years.
What's your take on the American automobile manufacturer versus European manufacturer? Because,
Wow, what a great question.
I mean, I see a huge difference.
There is. Okay, so, when you're number two, you always try harder. I'll give an example, because I do a lot with special forces in the United States military.
Yeah.
There's this company called Heckler Koch, and every SF guy knows what I'm talking about. And Heckler Koch, one of the engineers from Heckler Koch, we were involved with something, and we asked him to redesign something a little different. And the look on this man's face is typical German. He slams his hand down on the phone on the desk. And he said, "Why do you want to change it?" We said, "Well, because we think it's better." And he looked at us like we had three heads. It's designed that way because that's the best way to design it. That's, I think, the typical German engineer. And for the most part, it's true. The German engineering is pretty good.
Yeah, it's real good.
But the cost is a problem, right? So General Motors and Ford are always trying to build a car at the most moderate value for the average consumer,
Right.
right? And that's kind of the target market. So they're going to make a much larger run of the same product than Mercedes or Porsche, or the more you get technical with the Germans. Toyota has a different slant. Toyota Corporation, and when I first started dealing with Toyota, I didn't really understand the culture. It took me some time, but I could tell you this. The Toyota mentality of manufacturing a car is worldwide. They don't look at just America. And when the electric car subject came up in the last 5 years over and over again with the Toyota engineers that I deal with, you could tell the general consensus was, we believe that electric cars are coming someday, but right now our customer doesn't want that. That's why Toyota is not really big on the electric car. Now, they made an electric driving car. Mm-hmm. And when you talk to Toyota about it, they said, well, we wanted to make sure that we have understood the day-to-day driving components. Could we build that? And of course, everyone knows about the Prius. And the Prius basically was the Toyota's idea to go, hey, is this electric motor and the components, are they going to stand up in the cold weather and the hot weather? Is the consumer going to be happy with the drivetrains?
Yeah.
And it turns out, yes,
Okay.
It is true. But still, Toyota said, we don't think the electric power is available through the battery technology today to make it all happen.
Okay. You have a showroom? Do you have
Yeah.
is it just a plant? Can people just come down and see you?
Yes, people can come down and see we make stuff for the military, which they can't
Yep.
see, and the stuff
Yep.
that we make for the cars that we generate. Absolutely,
Wow.
yes. And it's kind of fun when people come in because
Yeah.
I had an elderly woman in tears, like literally in tears once with one of our cars, because it brought back the emotion of her husband. She just lost her husband.
Yeah.
And she was in her late 70s. She lost her husband. Her husband had bought her the very same car when they were first married. And it was we love people to come and kick our tires.
You're one of the most interesting guests we've had on the show.
I don't know about that.
No, you are.
Okay.
The name of the business is Innovation Performance Technologies. It sounds like you have your hands in a lot of different pockets right now. I mean, you've got a lot of things in your future that you're looking forward to.
It's I don't know. I lose sleep at night trying to figure out for my family and the business what is the future. I'm not certain where we're going. I think God's blessed us with looking at opportunities and taking advantage of those opportunities. But I think every day you wake up, the automobile industry is changing so quickly, and I think AI is about to change everybody's life in America.
Yeah.
Some good and some bad.
Yeah. Your website is innovationperformance.tech /
That's it.
That's it.
Yep.
People should get on it. I've enjoyed having you on. A lot of food for thought. Americans love their vehicles.
They do.
And you're going to have a captive audience here, regardless of what the changes are. Jon, thanks for joining us. And this is All Things Moore County, everybody. Have a great week.